Okay. Great. Good morning. Good morning from Rome. Or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. We welcome you to this session on what is the Council of Advisors. We're going to introduce you to the Council of Advisors and talk a little bit about what we do, how we add value, and then at the end of this session, hopefully we'll have some time to involve you in some of our discussions about what are the burning issues that the Council of Advisors and USAGSO are facing right now. First, I'd like to introduce you to my colleagues, actually my former colleagues, because I have just ended my regulation 2 terms on the Council of Advisors. And I'm off doing other things now for Girl Scouts. But I am, as I said, from Rome. I've been a member of the Council of Advisors for 6 years. I was one of the charter members. The Council of Advisors was started in 2016 as an advisory to the executive director, as we'll discuss further in a minute. After some exploratory work was done by a task force, a governance task force that got together and discussed the various approaches that we might take to supporting the executive director and providing governance assistance. So we're now going into our 7th year. And the 2 people who are joining me today, Valerie Russell, who is the chair of the Council of Advisors, and I think was in the 3rd round. Each year, of course, we recruit new members as old members roll off. And Valerie, as I recall, was in the 3rd year, and Shauki was maybe in the 5th, if I'm correct. Valerie is zooming into us. Valerie is a real champ. She is zooming into us from Dallas, Texas, where if you do the math, you will know that it's 2:30 in the morning, right? Is it 2:30? Right, we haven't gone to off daylight savings time yet. And she is the chair of the Council of Advisors. Shauki Neal is my colleague from Switzerland. She's coming in from Basel, and she has been a member for 2 years of the council and is the chair of the Council Development Committee, which is the committee responsible for identifying new members, onboarding the new members, recruiting new members, and ensuring that the council has the skill set that is needed at that particular time to support its mandate. We can go to the next slide.
Okay.
And basically, this is what we like to accomplish, what we plan to accomplish today. And I don't know whether anybody else has ever seen this this acronym here, but I remember it from one of my early Girl Scout leader trainings. By the end of this session, you will be able to explain what the Council of Advisors is, explore how the council adds value to USAGSO, have a clear idea and be able to describe the chief responsibilities of the Council of Advisors and how that is separate from what, for example, the Overseas Committee does or what the staff does. So we'll try to give you a sense of who does what. Explore ways that volunteers, yourselves, and others can connect and communicate with the Council of Advisors. And as I said at the end, we hope to have a robust discussion about some of the key strategic issues that are facing USAGSO today. And we'd like to use this session as an opportunity to get input from the field. Okay, next. Okay, so at the moment we've got 2 participants, Sylvia and Amy. So, I was going to do this whole, kind of annotation thing of this map, but at this point, I would just ask Sylvia and Amy to tell us where you are zooming in from, or indicate in the chat if you're not turning on your microphone. We've said that we are coming in from Texas and over here from Italy and from Switzerland. And Jennifer, who's joining us, is in Germany, right? Our coordinator of the VALC. Sylvia and Amy, can you tell us?
Hi. Hello, this is Sylvia, and I am actually a USAGSO staff I'm the finance and admin associate in the Vicenza office in Italy. So I'm
Ah,
also
so
in
you're in
Italy.
Italy with me. You're in Italy with me. Bra. Buongiorno. Buona mattina.
Buongiorno. Grazie.
And Amy?
It looks like Amy's in Amsterdam.
Amy's in Amsterdam. Okay. Super. So we've got two Italians, a Swiss, American, and someone who's Dutch. Okay. Clearly USA GSO covers almost this entire map. And we imagine that the people who will be watching on the recording will represent a host of other locations. So we welcome all of you, whether you're here live or will be joining us through the video later on. And I see two chats. Okay, Amsterdam, got it. Okay, next slide, Shauki. And at this point, I will hand it off to my friend and colleague, Shauki,
Thank you.
who's going to help us achieve the first couple of those objectives that we listed.
Okay, so first of all, hello, Amy and Sylvia, and hello to everybody else who might be watching this later in the recording. What we thought we'd like to do, instead of boring you to death with the PowerPoint slides, we thought we'd like to make it a bit interactive. So, and this is the first kind of interactive slide. So Amy and Sylvia, if you are up for it, we'd like to ask you what you think the Council of Advisors might be responsible for. And down here, this mess down here at the bottom is a list of tasks that the different groups, the Council of Advisors, the staff and the OCMTs are responsible for. And we thought we might like to see if we could put those into buckets. So, so first of all, let me ask you, because I know that Sylvia, you're on your iPhone, and Amy, I'm not sure how you're joining. Would that work for you? You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is talk to me, and I'll move the stuff around on the presentation. But in order to do that, I will have to just go out of it like this. Sorry, and so that I can move the things around. So does that work for you? Can we do that?
I guess we can try. I'm not sure. I'm trying to see if I can make it work.
Okay, all right. So well, let's just start and have a go, and then if not, I'll just go to the traditional slide and we'll do it in the traditional way. How's that? So so let's see, for instance, who's responsible for recruiting girl and adult members, do you think? Thoughts?
Staff.
Okay, let's put that up there. Okay. Whoops.
Or sorry, the direct recruitment would be in the OCMT level.
Right. Okay. So we're going to move it over to OCMT. Yeah. Okay. What about executing programming? So this is things like, you know, for the daisies, it would be the journeys, etc. Who's responsible for executing programming?
Because we have a couple of ringers in the group, right? Us and Sylvia should obviously be a ringer too as staff.
Thoughts?
Monitor progress on cookie contract.
Well, and Shaki, maybe it's also helpful here so that OCMT, just in case anyone is joining and is maybe a newer volunteer, that's your Overseas Committee Management Team, I believe is the actual acronym. And I think for the purposes of this could also be any of our volunteer, local volunteers that might participate on that team, or that might be troop leaders or other direct service volunteers.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, all you need to do is just shout out to me who's responsible for executing programming.
I
Probably,
think OCMT as well.
yeah. Okay, so who's responsible for monitoring progress on the cookie contract?
I don't know cookies.
You don't know cookies.
Oh,
you don't-
right. Oh, yeah, the cookie.
Oh,
contract.
right. Okay. Well, let
Many
me
of the overseas,
help you there.
yeah. And it's interesting, you know, for those who will be joining us, of course, the most of the civilian locations in USA GSO do not have access. In Rome, we don't have access to cookies. Cookies are limited to principally to the military bases. So indeed, some locations would not be involved in cookies.
Okay, so who's responsible for recruiting and selecting national council delegates?
Amy, what do you think?
I have no idea.
No
I'm not
idea.
100% sure what a national council delegate is either.
Oh, this
Ooh,
is
right,
good,
okay, right,
good,
well,
okay.
Let's
Something that we can talk about.
exactly. Let's stick it there for the moment then. Developing programming. Who's responsible for developing programming, do we think?
The OCMT?
Let's put that there. Okay. Who's responsible for drafting volunteer policies?
Staff.
Staff. Let's have a look in there. So, processing higher award nominations and applications.
Staff?
I feel like that could be a council of advisors one.
Oh, okay, okay. So we're not quite sure. Let's put that in the middle. Managing volunteer communications, social media.
Staff?
Okay. Let's see. Negotiating the memorandum of understanding with the military.
No idea.
I'll help you. Execute fundraising campaigns.
The OCMT?
Let's see. Let's put that there. Oh, somebody else has come into the. Shall I admit them?
I can do that. Done.
Okay. Advise the executive director on strategic issues. What do we think?
The Council of Advisors?
Yeah, okay. Nominate volunteers for higher awards.
OCMT.
Yep, okay. Approve highest award recipients.
Council of Advisors?
Okay. Review the USA GSO budget. Who's in control of the money?
Staff?
Welcome, Paola.
You're not going to get. You're not going to get marked on this. I will show you. I will show you the correct version at the
Right,
end.
there is the crib sheet at the end.
There is a crib sheet at the end. Yeah, yeah.
And welcome, Paula.
Welcome, Paula. Apply volunteer policies. Who's applying volunteer policies?
So we had draft volunteer policies before, and now we have apply volunteer policies.
Probably the OCMT level then.
Let's see, what does this one say? Arrange outdoor training.
OCMT?
What's this one here? Decide on geographic regions for member expansion.
Staff?
Okay. Oversee cookie sales.
Who sells the cookies? Clearly only on military bases in USA GSO, as we said, unless you participated in digital cookie, which Paris did last year.
And probably the OCMT.
Formulate the USA GSO budget.
Staff.
Okay. Manage member enrollment.
Staff.
Okay. Approve the cookie baker contracts. So this
The
is
council? Sorry.
council, yeah, okay. Give or get at least $1,000 a year.
Council.
Approve volunteer policies.
So before we had draft volunteer policies, we had implement volunteer policies. This is approved volunteer policies.
Council.
Okay, and last one, volunteer training. Who does the volunteer training?
Staff.
Staff. Okay. Okay, so I'll just give you a little moment to look at that then. So we're saying that the Council of Advisors recruits and selects National Council delegates. We're not sure, maybe they process the higher award nominations applications. They advise the exec director on strategic issues. They approve the highest award recipients. They approve the cookie baker contracts, and they give or get at least $1,000 a year, and they approve volunteer policies. The staff are monitoring progress on the cookie contract. They're drafting the volunteer policies, managing volunteer communications and social media, negotiating the memorandum of understanding with the military, reviewing the USA GSO budget, deciding on geographic regions for member expansion, formulating the budget, managing member enrollment and volunteer training. And then the OCMT, recruiting girl and adult members, executing programming, developing programming, executing fundraising campaigns, nominating volunteers for higher awards, applying volunteer policies, arranging outdoor training and overseeing cookie sales. Okay, that's our version. So would you like to see the official version?
Cut to the chase.
Let's get, yeah, exactly. Cut to the chase. Just tell me what the answer is. Right. So let me move my pictures here down to the bottom. So, in fact, the Council of Advisor approves the volunteer policies, as you said. We do approve the highest award recipients. Actually, the council is responsible for identifying what geographic regions we should be expanding in, because that's a strategic decision, and it takes resources, etc., to do that. We approve the cookie baker contracts. So in fact, not last year, but the year before, we had a specific task force who had a look at the different bakers that were available and went out and worked with the staff to agree the contracts going forward. We also have a responsibility to give or get at least $1,000 a year. So every member of the COA gives or gets $1,000 a year. And it's our role, basically, the reason why we're there is to advise the executive director on strategic issues. So that's our main role. We're also responsible for reviewing the budget, so making sure that the money's spent in the right way. Although we're not exactly a board, so we don't have the fiduciary responsibilities that a normal board would have, but we still do have some oversight on the budget. And it is our job to recruit and select National Council delegates. Now, someone said, oh, I don't know what a National Council delegate is. So let me hand over to Kathleen, who is our our
Delegate liaison.
yeah, exactly. So Kathleen, do you want to
Yeah.
explain?
Quickly, absolutely. Happy to do that. The National Council is in essence the Parliament of Girl Scouts. So it is the advisory group to the National Board of Directors and meets every 3 years and includes representatives from every council. So we'll be getting together, for example, in July at Disney World this year, as it turns out. So 1,000 representatives, 1,000 members of the National Council will get together for 3 days to review, discuss, debate, and vote on a number of key proposals that would change the constitution, basically, of the organization and deal with some of the key issues that are facing the organization right now. So it happens every triennium. So we serve for 3-year terms. I've been a National Council delegate 3 times in the past, and this year I'm the delegate liaison. So I'm kind of the mentor, the cheerleader for USA GSO's delegation. We have 6 delegates based on membership and based on the number of members that we have. And so 6 people will be participating in the National Council, 4 adults and 2 girls who were recruited last year and went through a process of a review process by the Council Development Committee, and were chosen out of all of the applications that we received. So it's a fabulous opportunity, and hopefully you'll learn a little more about this process in the coming months, because as we get closer to the convention, we're going to be having a number of sessions, outreach sessions to the membership to discuss the various proposals that are going to be put to the council at the July meeting. So the National Council session takes place for 3 days, July 18, 19, 20, I think it is. And then it's followed by the fabulous National Convention, the Girl Scout National Convention, which also happens every 3 years and is just an overload, just a Girl Scout fest. So you can look at, later on, if we have time, I can share the link to the website if you'd like to learn more about it. But if you think about Girl Scouts, the National Council being kind of the parliament of Girl Scouts and having a voice in the governance of Girl Scouts, that would give you a pretty good definition.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
So we've got a
Jackie.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing to interject there, because I see a note in the chat, which is a good reminder. I don't think we caught it there. So highest award in this slide is intended to be adult awards. This is not the higher girl awards. So this is things like appreciation pin, honor pin, thanks badge, and a thanks badge too. When we say highest award on this slide, regardless of which column it's in, it's all geared toward those adult awards.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat. Does the Council of Advisors have subcommittees for finance, marketing, programming, etc.? So that's a great question. So we have the Council Development Committee, which is responsible for recruiting members into the committee. We do have a very small finance committee. It only has 2 members at the moment. So we've got a treasurer and a kind of understudy, and they work with the chief exec to make sure that the numbers are all correct. We have a military committee, and their job is to liaise, because obviously a big part of what USA GSO does is based around the military bases. We have, and in fact, the military funds a significant part of our operations. So they're a very important customer group, as it were. And then we have committees and task forces depending on what we think the specific strategic needs are at the time. We have a strategic partnerships committee. So, and their role is to look at where we could develop strategic partnerships that would support USA GSO. we have, at the moment, we've just formed 2 task forces. One's called the WOW Task Force.
Well, that's so much fun.
Yeah, and that is really about marketing. It's about how do we market ourselves.
How do we
to
communicate?
the
Yeah, how can we
organization?
support kind of the brand of USA GSO?
Yeah, and then we've got another task force that's looking at what's the experience that we create. So voice of the customer, really. We want to make sure that we create a good experience for, in particular, actually, our volunteers. We'll talk about that in a moment, because if the volunteers are happy, then the girls will be happy. We can talk about that in a moment. Are there any subcommittees that I've missed, ladies?
Did you say the Fund Development Committee?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes. So fund development, the most important one. Fund development does exactly what the name says on the tin. So the job of the ladies in fund development is to identify ways that we can fund the USA GSO. So making contact with donors, asking for it's essentially asking for money, asking for support. It doesn't always have to be monetary support. It could be other things. So they are very interested in having contacts with organizations or individuals who would be willing to donate and to support our activities. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on?
Is it clear what, we've gone through what the Council of Advisors does, what it might be useful to go through the other 2 columns, just to clarify.
So
Difference between what staff does, the Council of Advisors is kind of the strategic umbrella, right? We're thinking as opposed to doing. We're not doing the operational things, which are divided between the staff and the OCMT, the Overseas Council Management Team.
Yeah. So again, according to this list, you can see what the staff are responsible for doing. So for instance, they're drafting volunteer policies, they are managing member enrollment, they're monitoring progress on the cookie contract. So they're making sure that it's actually executed in the way that it's been agreed. They're developing the programming, they're formulating the budget that the COA would then approve. They're negotiating the memorandum of understanding with the military, and when they've negotiated that, or as they're in that process, we would expect them to come back to the COA and report back and say, right, okay, this is where we're at, this is what we're thinking of doing, so that the COA can make inputs and say, well, maybe we should be directing it a little bit more there or a little bit more there. Okay, so the staff are responsible for executing and developing the programs that basically keep everything running. So and that the OCMT then can use with the girls at the sharp end of things. So in terms of the OCMT, they are nominating. Oops, sorry. They're nominating adult volunteers for the higher awards. They're recruiting girl and adult members. They're doing the volunteer training. They're overseeing the cookie sales. So they're helping the girls with their cookie sales, making sure that that all goes smoothly. They're taking the girls outside, doing hikes, hanging off cliffs, all the stuff that we all love to do. And that's, a big part of Girl Scouts. That's the bit I get excited about. They're applying the volunteer policies and they're executing the programs that are developed by the staff. Okay. So what questions do you have around the kind of the responsibilities and how they're?
Is that all clear?
So-
Yeah.
So
Paula.
for Girl Scout alumni, do we keep in contact with alumni?
So Well, that's one of the things that we're talking about in terms of the voice of the customer and the wow, is what contact do we have with our alumni? And the short answer is yes, we do try and keep in contact with them. Are we very good at it? Probably not. So I think there's quite a lot of scope for improvement around that.
In fact, in the WOW committee, which is one of the main projects of the WOW committee right now, is to kind of brainstorm ideas for what our presence at the national convention should be, right? We're going to have a big booth, one of the largest booths, I understand, at national convention. So it's a great opportunity to, really explain to the movement what USA GSO is. How often do I hear when I'm traveling, oh, there's Girl Scouts overseas? Which makes me nuts, of course, when I hear it, because I want to say, listen, if Girl Scouting is global, it is us. We are the ones who are making it global. We are the Girl Scouts overseas. So we have this great opportunity at convention to, kind of improve the brand awareness, let's say. I'm speaking as a marketing professor, obviously, but of USA GSO. And one of the events that we're planning, in fact, is an event for alumni. So we're going to be getting in touch with, all of the, hopefully all of the USA GSO alumni, many of whom go to the convention because it's just such a joyful, a joyful event. So there's a lot of former Girl Scouts who go, and we're hoping to corral them into an event one evening there. I don't know whether that answers your question, Paula, but.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? No. Okay, so thanks for your participation in that little exercise. And so just to summarize, here you've got a lovely photo of us all at Edith Macy. This was taken in July, and it's fantastic to get together to see everybody. People come from all over the world, so people from Africa, Japan, Europe, and what we do is we approve volunteer policies, we approve the adult highest award recipients, we decide on the geographic regions for member expansion, we approve the cookie baker contracts, we give or get at least $1,000 a year, we advise the executive director on strategic issues, we review the budget, we recruit and select National Council delegates, and our biggest roles are really in fundraising, so bringing funds into USA GSO, advocacy for USA GSO, both within Girl Scouts and the wider environment that we're working in, and networking and bringing resources into the organization. So that's really the responsibilities of the COA. And it's great to work with, really smart women who are really dedicated to the cause. So it's also great fun.
And there's a link here that's live. And so you can follow that link to the the USA GSO Council Advisors webpage if you want to read more about what we do, what the process is, and a little bit more about the members.
Yeah, okay. So let me hand over to Valerie, who's going to talk a little bit more about, in detail about what we do.
So this may be a slightly subtle shift from thinking about responsibilities to then what do we do? What does our work look like? What is our work product? So, at the OCMT level, you're doing direct girl delivery. You are delivering program and driving that mission in direct service to girls. So what we do is not that. We're not working directly with girls, but we love to hear from girls. We have opportunities to set those opportunities. But what we're doing is, as you heard Shaki describe, strategic input and review. So when there's a cycle of strategic planning, which a lot of times stems from our national board and from GSUSA, we can engage with the staff team thinking through the strategies for USA GSO, and it's usually a 3 to 5 year horizon. The staff owns those plans, but we can sit in an advisory space on that, giving our insights from our own experiences with the international space, Girl Scouts overseas, or our own even professional backgrounds that we bring to the table, that we can give those insights. As Shauki's mentioned a few times, fundraising is also a big part of this. While we're not directly responsible for the finances of GSO, because we are a department of GSUSA, we do carry a responsibility for helping to ensure the sustainability of our program. And to have a Girl Scout program requires funding. Shauki mentioned the military is a big source of our funding, but we're also looking to increase and diversify by bringing in more individual donors, access to other grants, corporate grants. So that's a space where we as a council of advisors can support. It kind of blends with that next comment there, but our networks, the people that we know professionally, that we work in other social clubs or settings with, that can all go to support our fundraising initiatives, and just to help ensure that security, sustainability for our movement and our work. It can also bring programmatic opportunities. I'd say the other tenant big responsibility and what we do is share our passion, share our mission, get people excited about Girl Scouts overseas in different ways, sharing your stories, hearing the things that you're doing as boots on the ground, working with girls, seeing that impact. We can take those examples, those stories, package some of that at times into fundraising. That's something staff helps do. They can help put together a fundraising package, and then we can help identify target audiences that might respond well to those messages. And it's just a cycle for us where we're constantly trying to get out. They've talked, both Kathleen and Shauki, about our WOW committee and our Voice of Customer committee. So we have a very focused effort that we've kicked off this year to really think about this communication loop that we can have with our membership, just to help drive our success. So I'll pause there for a minute. Questions?
I'm sorry. I'm just curious for the fundraising, like this is for GSO, right? The Girl Scouts
This is for
overseas.
Girl Scouts overseas. Yes.
So where do you find the most success, I guess, in which sector of the world for fundraising?
Wow. So that's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer to that, but we can kick that into, we have a fantastic fund development staff member who may be able to give us some insight to that in terms of where the source is coming from. So a lot of our campaigns, I suspect, are still fairly US centric.
Yeah, I would say so. If I think about what Catherine presented, it is fairly US centric.
Certainly a lot of the grants, and
Mm,
some of that also has to do with nonprofit status. So we are a US nonprofit, so that 501c3 designation, which every country has their own system. GSO and the way that it operates is under that umbrella of GSUSA. Get all the letters in the right order. So that, I think a lot of the money is still somewhat US centric, just with how that setup is.
yeah, it would be nice to have some more corporate sponsors, but that seems to be quite tricky.
Oh, thank you. Could I ask? I mean, I'm just curious. wouldn't know where to look for this, but I mean, the Girl Scout overseas, like how many girls are, I mean, scouts overseas? And then do you have those numbers by, parts of the world?
Yes. Do I have them top of mind? No. But yes, actually. So maybe talking a little bit about what we do from the sense of, so I mean, a lot of what we do are meetings, and our executive director, so we meet every 2 months, so approximately 6 times a year. And part of our meetings do involve a report from the executive director. And this is one of the topics that she updates on pretty much every meeting. Where are our membership goals and our progress to those goals? But
if I could just add one point, Lane Cook, our fearless leader, the executive director, is going to be participating in this conference. So in the sessions in which she appears, she probably has those numbers tattooed into her DNA code.
Yeah.
And so you might want to ask, where of the,
So just to give some flavor to it. So I think the number was, it's just under 11,000 girls and volunteers in USA GSO. We have some in Africa, but quite a small number. So it would be great. We'd love to increase that. We have quite a few in places like Shanghai, Japan. But again, it would be nice to expand more in Southeast Asia. We have a lot in Europe because obviously there's the military presence. And also we have, I think the numbers were, it's just over a third military members, just under a third US expats. So people who've been moved. So for instance, in Basel here in Switzerland, most of the members are girls whose parents have moved to Basel to work for the international pharmaceutical companies. So a third of the girls and volunteers are from that kind of demographic, and then the remainder are actually third country nationals. So if I think about the Basel troop, probably about 45% were American, another 15% were Brits, and then the rest were, or are, even, I don't know what the current number is actually, to be fair, are girls from other nationalities who want the opportunity to be in an English-speaking environment, who are also away from home. So GSO actually not only provides a really great service for Americans who are overseas, but also for other nationalities who are overseas. And I think that connection, that networking with, people from so many different cultures and places is one of the massive values that we can bring in the work that we do.
Interesting. Thank you for that. That's very interesting.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Val.
So to step to our next slide.
Ooh, it's a build.
And it is. So we wanted to share with you guys as well what kinds of things we look for in the COA. So we have a recruitment process, much like the National Council delegates, and annually we go out and are trying to identify candidates that can join our work, come onto the COA. We have 15 spots on the COA that we try to fill, and our terms are 3-year terms that can be renewed. I guess one time for a total of 6 years. Kathleen mentioned she served 6 years and has now rolled off. So the skills and attributes that we're looking for. Do you want to bring up the graphic, Shauki? I think it all comes in together. Yeah. So So 5 kind of basic things that we're looking for. First and foremost, we want people that have some international experience or exposure, because there's differences. Many of our volunteers have experience in stateside councils. You can probably relate to this. There are things that are different when you have been overseas. And so I think having that perspective is really important when you're helping to think through strategy and fundraising and how to advocate cross-culturally. We're also looking for at specific business skills or attributes. So based on the work that you've heard, that might mean we are out looking for people with a little bit more skill or savvy in the fundraising area or in finance or general governance. As we've built this out, that's an area where it kind of ebbs and flows based on the things that we're expecting our work to center on, and the skills and attributes that we already have in the COA. So we might recruit more heavily for a special skill if we identify a gap based on the work that we have going on. We want to make sure that members of the Council of Advisors are able to separate from operations and be in that strategic space. So when we're thinking about, let me think through an issue here. So maybe cookies, although that one doesn't hit all of our areas. We talked about being able to do the cookie contract is something the COA does, but thinking about the cookie contract and its benefit for the organization across all the countries we service versus thinking about your amazing daughter, Girl Scout in your family who is going to be out selling cookies, and being able to separate those two spaces. So that's kind of where we think about operations differently from the strategic side. So we need people that can really focus on and lift to that strategic layer. We're looking for people that have strong networks. Advocacy is a key part of this, and developing, or the ability to develop partnerships, get our message out to people. So we want people not only that have the strong network, but are then willing to be vocal within their network and leverage that network. That might be the military. It might be more civil organizations if you're in a strong expat community. So things like VALC, the Federation of American Women's Clubs overseas, or things like American Chambers of Commerce that have groups around the world. We also want people that are bringing unique perspectives, so that can help drive diversity of thought. This can be perspectives from different countries, perspectives from different genders, perspectives just holistically, right? We want to build a strong team that has diverse backgrounds and really can challenge us to think differently. So Shauki, you can pop up my the little side note here. Girl Scout experience is not actually required to serve on something like this, because sometimes that can also add to the diversity of thought. I've been a Girl Scout forever, since I was 5. So the way that I think about things has lots of Girl Scout bias even in it, because I've had my experiences through multiple councils, and sometimes just having somebody who has no clue what I'm talking about that can sit at the table will challenge me to think in some different ways. So that, I think, is a key part of it. And I also caution people, like when we think about the COA or in stateside councils, even board service, it's not a volunteer progression. This is not like a master volunteer thing after you've been a troop leader for a while or served on a service team for a while, or an OCC. I got to get my overseas lingo in there. The OCC, it's not like you bridge to a point that you become a COA member. It really is a different way of volunteering and supporting the movement where you're liaising across different adult networks to drive the movement, the success of the movement. So I'll pause there again. Are there any other questions or comments that you guys have about that? Okay.
Okay.
So then we can step to the next one.
Burning questions. Actually, this this is is kind of the fruit of the committee work that next slide, please. That Shauki mentioned before, by the voice of the committee, voice of the customer group. And Val, don't know whether you want to lead the discussion on this. Next slide.
Yeah, I think we pushed. Did we skip this one?
Sorry. So we come from here.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
here are the strategic issues that we've identified.
Right, and
Yeah.
then the next slide is burning questions.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think we need to.
Okay, yeah.
We'll sort it out.
Well, so do you want me to? I'll cover this. So, so as we've been discussing, we had our retreat in July, and there were 4 strategic issues that we identified that we want to focus on over the next year or so. I already spoke to you about the WOW committee and the voice of the customer. The issues that we want to address is, number one, we feel that we need to improve volunteer support. So we've had some, there are some kind of satisfaction surveys that go out, and what we've realized is that the experience that our volunteers are having isn't necessarily a very positive one, and that we that we lose a lot of people. They do a year with us as a volunteer and then they leave. So what we need to do is we need to work out, why is that happening? What can we do to address it? And how can we keep those people in the organization when we've spent all the effort in training them, and they've got to know us and we've got to know them. So that's a key area for improvement. The second thing that we need to focus on is that we need to develop closer relationships and representation from the military, because they are an important part of our funding, and because they're also a very significant chunk of our population. Then we need to make sure that we are accurately representing their needs. So we have currently, we've got a couple of people on the COA who have that kind of military connection, but we have 2 vacancies currently, and we would like to see if we could recruit somebody additionally who has that background. I already spoke about extending our geographic reach, excuse me. So supporting people in Africa and Asia. And then finally, of course, and this is probably always on the list, ensuring that we have a secure financial footing. So partly through cookie sales, and we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years to expand cookie sales in GSO. So Kathleen mentioned the digital cookie sales that we were able to launch in Paris. So we're hoping to extend that further, and then also fundraising, trying to make sure that we have a secure base for the future. So those are the strategic issues according to the Council of Advisors. But what we'd like to know now is what you guys think. And in fact, our Voice of the Customer Committee has come up with a set of questions that they want to ask you and get your feedback on. So I've got my trusty notebook and I'll be taking notes on what you say. But before we go on to those questions, are there any thoughts or comments or reflections that you have about these 4 strategic priorities that we've identified?
I guess I would just give feedback on the volunteer support. I'm in Shanghai, so I find that a lot of the volunteers are overseas Chinese returnees. Maybe they lived in Canada or the US and then returned. But what I find is of course, we train in English, but I find when we speak in Mandarin, they understand and can really get the feeling much better. The volunteer toolkit is all in English, so I don't really know if they really, I'm just wondering about the language gap a little bit, because that sometimes, I mean, if I have to read Chinese, everything in Chinese, I think I would give up. So, so if they feel that way, yeah, that's that's
yeah, great input. I've noted it.
And then for the extending geographic reach, I mean, Asia. So you mentioned there is a hope to extend it to Southeast Asia. Did I catch that correctly?
Well, yeah, I mean, wherever we can support people in setting up troops, we're happy to do that. I think that, given the economic growth in Southeast Asia, there probably are lots of American expat families, not necessarily connected to military bases. Those are the obvious places for us to go, who would love to have the support of the GSO. But again, I mean, we've only just started talking about that, so don't ask me if I've got any ideas about how we're going to do that, because the answer is no.
Only because, I mean, in Shanghai, in the international schools, there are many parents who come from Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand and then repatriate. But they've gone, their children have participated in, Girl Scouts. So, I mean, they are good candidates if we reach out to people who maybe could help to start things up, or, I mean, or who are familiar with the program.
Okay, good. Any thoughts from Sylvia and Amy? Thank you, Paula.
Yes.
No. Okay.
Maybe we step to the burning questions part.
Yeah.
I think just a quick time check. I think we have just under 20 minutes to wrap up our session. So we've kept a reasonable pace here, but we'll all the questions on the screen at the same time. But I believe that this was the list of questions that we had from our Voice of Customer group to specifically poll and get some insights on. So maybe rather than step through them in order and try to get answers, I'll give you guys a moment to read the questions and then share what you feel like is the most relevant or critical. Shauki, are you okay with that flow?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Because what you might feel more passionate about one of these than another, and I want to make sure we have time to hear that part versus we might only make it through the first 3 in the remaining time.
Val, can I make a suggestion too?
Yeah.
Because many participants will obviously be watching the recording and might not be with us right now. And so perhaps what we can do, Shauki's email will appear on the last slide here. And Shauki, if you're comfortable with us saying to anyone who's watching the recording and therefore not able to participate in the live discussion, to drop a note to Shauki at her usagso.org email, which will be on the last slide here, with your input, right, on any or all of these questions, because what we'll do is pass this input on to the Voice of the Customer committee, which is focusing specifically on these 5 questions.
Can I answer one of the questions? If money were no object, what would you buy for your USA GSO community? I guess I would buy the vests. I mean, the volunteer vests, because I think that really helps to kind of secure an attachment to the organization. I mean, we don't do that because all of our funds that we collect from the girls, they just go back to basically everything for the girls. Nothing goes to the volunteers. So, but I think that to have something that, you know, if I'm a volunteer and I can put a patch on my vest or whatever, that would be so cool. I mean, it would be like, I'm really part of the Girl Scouts. Just my 2 cents.
Okay, great.
I was gonna say my biggest pain point is kind of along those lines of resources. So we're a new troop this year, and actually, hi Valerie, we spoke in the spring about this. New troop in Amsterdam, and trying to get uniforms and get those materials over here, and the cost of everything has really been one of the biggest things as a volunteer trying to set up a troop. It isn't easy trying to coordinate all of our uniform orders and getting them shipped over here, or having, you know, families bring them back in suitcases is something that's really been an issue, but also the costs and everything with that too. And I mean, fully understanding inflation, but there have been some barriers with trying to figure out how are we going to get these things as a new troop, how, you know, figuring out how much you need to budget for the year. I think budgeting help from a council perspective of trying to figure out, you know, based on the activities that your troop may be interested in, how much do you collect for troop dues? Figuring out how to set up a bank account, like getting some more of that hands-on support, especially for new leaders, I think would be really beneficial. And I mean, even with us, we were so fortunate that there was a troop disbanding nearby, and they ended up giving us a lot of their materials, but we would have been so lost without that. So that's been the biggest concern and kind of pain point from the perspective of a new troop overseas.
Okay, great. That's great input. And actually, that's something that we could easily help with. Well, I say that, I mean, I'm not making any commitments, but it sounds like that's something that could be done. But anyway, right. Other thoughts?
Also a note for what would make your USA GSO volunteer experience better is, I mean, with the big point of being overseas and learning about other cultures, is having better ways to network with other Girl Scout overseas troops and communities. Because I mean, we kind of have the Facebook group, but otherwise that's kind of it in terms of overseas connections. I mean, I've been over the last day of just meeting people from other communities, and it's like, oh, you know, this puts a face to it. I didn't know what age level these girls had. I mean, I know that there's a map of all that online, but getting that contact information, we shared emails yesterday. Having a little bit of a better network for allowing us to reach out and communicate with these other troops for like World Thinking Day, or to expand our girls' horizons, I think would be really nice as well. I mean, having some sort of a website or an email group, or just something that allows us to communicate with each other more easily.
Okay.
Could I ask a question for the OCMT? I mean, somebody who doesn't have a child in, you know, whatever, primary to high school anymore, I mean, whose child is already in university, can join the OCMT. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think the troop, I find that the leaders who are running the troops, as well as trying to organize the various troops within a school, they're just really overwhelmed. So I think it would be probably, yeah, helpful to have more of more people who are more free to be involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and actually, that kind of harks back to the question that you asked before about alumni. Figure out who the alumni are in your area and get people. You can get people involved that way. I know I was involved in the OCMT long after my daughter was out of Girl Scouts. It was just a way for me to continue to share my experience and the expertise that I had built up over the years working with the Rome location. So absolutely. I mean, just as you don't even need to have kids in Girl Scouts to be part of the Girl Scout movement on any level.
Well, you don't even need to have kids.
Advisors. Sorry, Sha.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't even need to have kids. So
Yeah.
we had a couple of young women. Actually, they weren't that young. They were anyway, women who were volunteers who didn't have children of their own. And whether it was a choice or not, I'm not sure. But and they were great volunteers, and they did it partly because they wanted the social contact with the other adult volunteers. So it wasn't just about the girls. It wasn't kind of like, oh, let me borrow these girls for a few hours. It was more about so I think we can bring things to people everywhere. You don't need to have children or have children who are actually in the troop.
And I'd also highlight, I think, the volunteer experiences. I have shared this as I mentor people in my job at my company. There's a lot of very tangible skills that you can acquire in a volunteer capacity that can then really build and lift your career. So, I mean, you can even be on just a personal development quest, and whether it's leading girls or engaging with an OCC and helping to organize, plan. There's a lot of different, very concrete business skills that I think people can hone. I mentored a lady once, and she was struggling to break through to actually leadership within her professional setting. And so we talked about in a volunteer setting. So maybe there's a way where you can start to get some access and exposure to skill sets that you can then kind of work together and advance in your personal setting. And actually, I would share with you my own personal experience. It was a service unit manager because I was in a stateside council back then, but the equivalent of an OCC was one of the first leadership roles that I could talk about before I had ever had that opportunity in my company. But to work with a group of troop leaders and think through, like, how do we get work done? How do we improve our service unit, setting goals on growth and money and all those things. And I saw it come together later in my career. So I don't undervalue what that can be, and is probably an element that we can push differently in certain settings to get a different volunteer population activated.
Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts?
I'll just say that why do I volunteer? I think it's because I went to a women's college. And so I think that, and I'm living in Asia, there's still many stereotypes about women and what they should or should not do. So I think it is important to educate girls from the get-go, from when they're small, that they basically can do anything. They can do STEM, they can do sports, they can, to give them the confidence and to open their eyes to what is possible. That is very important for me, and that's why I volunteer.
Great. Thoughts from Amy and Sylvia about why you volunteer? Actually, one of you staff, but
I mean, honestly, I think about that a lot because sometimes I'm not sure. It's just something that I've always done. Growing up in Girl Scouts and then kind of falling into volunteering after Girl Scout age. I actually started with campus Girl Scouts. So that recruitment, I guess, worked really well. But just it's kind of something that I kept doing as a part of the community and as something to do outside of work. And actually going back to what you guys were talking about before, I mean, I don't have a girl in Girl Scouts. I am just volunteering on my own. And actually out of our troop has 3 co-leaders. None of us have a girl in our troop. So we're kind of different in that sense. But I mean, I think it ties back to the community level and doing something for the good of it, just for that sake. I think is why we kind of all do it. Or I shouldn't speak for my co-leaders, but I think that may be why I'm in it. But again, sometimes I'm not 100% sure. It's just part of my life.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so this is Sylvia. I'm not a volunteer at the moment. I am a staff member of the GSO. Going back to something that was said earlier about receiving the merchandise bought from the store. I actually sent some of the things that like patches and stuff to the members, to the communities in the North Atlantic region. And not only the cost, it was mentioned the cost of shipping that is very high, and also something that I would like to, that I can point out is the time that it takes to receive everything. Because obviously, mainly we go through the Italian post office or the military post office on base that we have here in Vicenza. I think that's a problem that I see with the communities, that it takes so long sometimes to receive stuff that it gets there too late when the event has already happened, or it gets lost in the mail. So I'm not sure how maybe we can go around this problem, if there might be a solution to it, or something.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, one one possible solution that I'll share, just based on our experience in Rome, is if you've got contacts in the embassy, wherever your location is, right? So if some of your girls or some of your volunteers might be working at the U.S. consulate or U.S. embassy, you might be able to set up or to arrange for mail to be sent to you at the embassy. Have a box at the embassy. And that's one of the things that we did for years for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We had the possibility, working with the CLO, the community liaison officer, we were able to set up a box, and so we got mail in the diplomatic pouches, basically. So for example, Sylvia, if you were sending something from Vicenza, you'd be able to do that through the military, and it would go to Amsterdam, if there's a consulate in Amsterdam, or to Rome. Not always possible, the embassy staffs are not always that amenable as they were in Rome, but it's something to think about. That makes things easier.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Anything else to share in our last couple of minutes? So Kathleen, maybe we need to get Shauki's email up on the screen just for the video
Next
stop.
Oh, yeah, next slide. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Now, for everyone who is following on the recording, we'll share these 2 links. One is the link to the Council Advisors page, where you'll find more about us and or them. Actually, I keep referring to myself as part of the council because it was such a big part of my life for 6 years. And now I'm on the VALC committee. So actually, I'm still serving in a non council role on one of the committees. So you can find out more about the council here, and you have Shauki's email address to share your answers if you've got an input, if you want to respond to any of those questions. Those are the questions, as we've said, that the voice of the committee, the voice of the customer committee have identified as key burning questions. So we would love to have your input on that.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. And, you know, if you think of other questions or, you know, other thoughts, other suggestions, come up after you've kind of digested, marinated what we've talked about today, please drop your thoughts to Shauki, who I thank for zooming in, and particularly thank Valerie, who is just a champion in the middle of the night there, who will be driving her kids from Girl Scout outing in what, 4 hours? Go to
I just have to drop them off. I'm thankfully not a chaperone for the event.
Anyway, get back to bed. And thanks to Amy and Sylvia and Paola for joining us, and Jennifer for coordinating.
Thank you.